Thank you for trusting Aurora Rally Equipment Products and welcome to the Aurora family. This video will show you a step-by-step installation for the Aurora 701 Xplorer. Start by carefully opening the kit box. Take out the kit parts and put them on a clean surface. Here is a list of the tools you need to install the kit on your bike. Start disassembling the bike by removing the light mask. Remove these 3 bolts by using a T30 Torx socket. Unhook the brake line and front wheel speed sensor from the mask guide. Pull the mask towards the front fender. Unplug the light harness. Carefully cut and remove every zip tie that keep the cables in place. Remove the warning lights by gently pulling them out of the white housing. Remove and unplug the pressure sensor. Remove the 3 plugs from the metal bracket. Unplug all the cables using a flat screwdriver to press on the locking mechanism of each plug. Undo the 2 screws that keep the metal bracket in its place, and then the 2 screws that support the mask on the top clamp. The cables of the right switch pass through the mask, ending at the left side of the bike near the steering head. In order to remove them, you must remove the left side radiator shroud. Start by taking out the seat. Then undo these 4 bolts using a T30 Torx socket. Remove the radiator shroud. Undo the 3 bolts, unplug the 3 hoses, and remove the plastic frame cover. Carefully remove the 2 plugs of the right switch using a flat screwdriver by pressing the plug lock and pulling the connectors apart. Remove the brake line and front wheel speed sensor from the cable guide. Remove the ABS switch and release the mask from the switch cables. Carefully and slowly remove the main harness from the mask. Make sure you have cut the main zip ties that keep the harness in its place on the mask. Remove the flash relay. Use a marker to draw a line that you will use as a guideline to cut the mask in order to create an opening for the brake lines, so that you separate them from the mask. If you don't feel like cutting the mask, you will have to remove the brake line from the front caliper and the master cylinder in order to be able to separate these 2 parts. Use a 3mm drill to create a hole in the 4 plastic covers, 2 on each side. Going towards installing the spider head clamp. Use a small pair of pliers to remove the 4 small M6 plastic covers from the frame. Using an M6 bolt, clean the thread of all mounting points by screwing the bolt all the way in and out. Blow air if need be to clean the hole from any debris. Remove the speedometer from the mask by removing the 2 Torx screws. Remove the warning lights and the turn indicators. the indicators on the Aurora navigation tower. Take care of the cables, they can easily be damaged. Be careful not to bend the fins on the tower. Do not pull or push them in any direction. Install the warning lights in any of the 5 available slots on the navigation tower. We recommend installing the supplied retaining rings to secure the warning lights in their place, otherwise they can generate a rattling noise. Time to install the original speedometer on the Aurora speedometer mount. Remove the mount from its bag and put the supplied rubber grommets in the holes using a small set of pliers. Put the speedometer on the mount and use the original screws to secure it in place. Do not over-tighten. Remove the spider head clamp from its bag and disassemble it. Remove the U-bolt and the 4 screws from it. Discard the plain nuts. They are only there to keep the assembly together. Install the U-bolt on the bike. There's no need to take out or undo the bolts of the radiator expansion tank. Install the spider head clamp by mounting the nylock nuts on the U-bolt. At this phase, there's no need to use a ratchet, just hand tighten it. Install the 4 M6 bolts that align the head clamp on the steering head. Leave them loose enough for the head clamp to be able to move back and forth. Start tightening the M8 nylock nuts on the U-bolt, trying to keep the same amount of thread visible on both sides. Check the alignment of the head clamp using the M6 bolts on each side as a reference. When the nuts start to push the head clamp on the steering head, switch to a torque wrench. Set it at 25 Newton meters. The final result should look like this. If the alignment is not acceptable, loosen the nuts, change the position, and repeat. Mount the speedometer in its position using the supplied bolts. If you are using a handlebar riser, make sure the speedometer doesn't touch the steering clamps. If it does, push it away to create a small gap between them. Prepare the navigation tower for installation. Start by removing the M8 plain nut that keeps the tower in shape when new. Remove the 2 head clamp M8 mounting bolts from the tower. Put the warning lights, the ABS, and the fuel pump switch in any of the available slots on the navigation tower. The mounting positions used in this video is our recommended placement. Align the tower with the head clamp and insert the mounting bolts into position from the right side of the bike. A torque wrench should be used. Set it at 25 Newton meters and secure the tower in place. First, tighten the upper bolt, then the lower. Now tighten all the other M8 bolts using the same torque value of 25 Newton meters. Take off the lower cover of the tower by removing the 4 M6 bolts. Install the plug-and-play wiring harness. Mount all the wiring plugs of the switches, the flash relay, indicators, speed sensor, etc. Use zip ties to secure them on the tower. Use EVA foam on the plastic connectors to avoid rattling noises from the tower. Take your time. Do not rush and be careful not to damage any cables. Put back the lower cover and tighten the 4 M6 bolts. The switch cable should be inserted into the tower through the same opening as the speedo cable. The main harness goes under the tower, between the tower and the lower cover. Again, use EVA foam if you want to further protect the main harness. Mount the cable guide on the left fork, just below the lower triple clamp, using the supplied bolts. Do not over-tighten, this is just a guide. Remember to put the brake line and the speed sensor cable in the guide before screwing it fully in. Remove the main switch cover by pulling it upward. Remove the rectifier and all the bolts that keep the right side plastic frame cover in place. Remove the rear side panels from the bike. Take care not to break the plastic guide that keeps the right side panel on the fuel tank. This guide is located on the lower front part of the panel. Completely remove the airbox from the bike by removing these bolts. Loosen the screw that secures the airbox on the air intake and pull the airbox toward the rear end of the bike. You may need to move the ECU toward the rear to allow easy removal of the air filter. Be careful when you remove the air temperature connector. Remove the OEM skid plate. Loosen the lambda sensor from the exhaust header. This way it will be easier to remove it in the next steps. Unplug its connector. Remove the exhaust header and the rear mount. Before installing the lower tank brackets, the rectifier needs to be relocated to the left side of the bike. Start by removing the bolts from the top radiator mounts. This way, access to the rectifier's plugs is gained. Cut the zip ties that keep the rectifier's cables in place. Disconnect the plugs with the help of a flat screwdriver. Remove the engine mounting bolt and replace it with the one supplied by Aurora. Put the spacer in place and tighten the bolt using a torque wrench set at 45 Newton meters. Put the rectifier on the supplied bracket and bolt everything in place. Similarly, install the lower tank bracket on the other side of the bike using the same method. Leave the M16 nut on both sides loose. Install the supplied fuel line following the on-screen procedure. Remove the lower rear tank bolts. You need to undo the left one first. Do not remove it completely, then undo the right one. The shaft that goes through the rear tank has threads on both sides, so keep that in mind. Lift the rear tank and unplug the fuel pump connector. Plug the supplied fuel harness on the fuel pump. Put the rear tank in its place and then tighten the bolts. Install the rear tank brackets in their designated location. Bear in mind that the supplied bolts have different lengths and must be installed in the same positions you will find them in the bag. Before fully tightening the bolts, make sure the tank mount is in the correct place. Install the exhaust header. Keep the exhaust bolts loose at this stage. Install the skid plate bracket. Tighten the engine bolt using a torque wrench set at 45 Newton meters. Tighten the lower mount on the frame and keep the rest of the bolts loose at this stage. Install the fuel tanks. Support the interconnection hose to the skid plate bracket following the on-screen procedure. Check the clearance between the exhaust and the left fuel tank. Adjust the exhaust and the fuel tank position if needed. Connect the fuel pump and the fuel hose before putting the right side fuel tank on the bike. Put the fairing mounts on the radiator. Remove the M5 plain nuts that keep the bolts in place. These will not be used. Relocate the horn as shown in the video. Install the Tygon hose following the on-screen procedure. The outlet should go as low as possible and not close to the exhaust in any way. In order to prevent the steering from touching the fuel tanks, the steering lock needs to be adjusted. Follow the on-screen procedure. Make sure that both fuel petcocks on the tanks are fully open. Install the front side panels on the bike using the supplied quarter-turn bolts and the 4 original bolts. Install the screen on the bike. First, make sure the aluminum pins at the upper part of the tower meet the holes on the screen. Secure the quarter-turn bolts and install the 6 Torx bolts on the sides of the screen. The kit comes with 2 bolts. The other 4 are from your own bike. Check the alignment of the screen and tighten the aluminum pins at the top of the tower. Next, you have to tighten all the M6 Allen bolts on the tower. Torque them to 8 Newton meters. Tighten the top anti-vibration mounts for the instrument backplate. Remove the 4 M6 bolts that will be used to secure the instrument backplate. Unpack the instrument backplate and put the extra rubber grommets where needed, depending on your navigation hardware. Install the bracket on the bike using the 4 M6 bolts. Do not fully tighten. Remove the 4 bolts that keep in place the small bracket with the warning and the ABS lights. Use a ratchet and tighten the lower anti-vibration mounts of the instrument backplate. Put the small bracket back into place. Don't forget to tighten the top mounts of the instrument backplate. The supplied USB charger can be mounted on various locations on the navigation tower. Cut both side panels by printing the pattern supplied in the kit installation manual. You can start with the cutting wheel and then by using a Dremel to adjust and optimize the shape to match the tank profile. Take your time and do not rush. Put the trimmed rear side panels back in place. Mark the position of the panels that need to be drilled so that the rear panel accessories are installed. Drill with the small drill first, so even if the hole is off center, you can correct it while enlarging it. The final size should be 16 millimeters in diameter. Install the rear panel accessories and tighten the M6 bolts. The rubber allows for some flexibility so that the position of the panel can be optimum. The easiest way to put the stickers on the fairings is to use soap mixed with water. First, you must clean and wipe the surface of the fairing. Remove the glue cover from the sticker and spray some soap with water on the glue surface. Put the sticker on the fairing and push on the surface towards the edge of the sticker, forcing the water and the air to get out. Use a soft cloth when doing so and be careful not to scratch the coating on the stickers. Use the heat gun to dry the trapped water and continue to push on the surface towards the edge until all the bubbles with water and air disappear. Repeat the procedure with all the remaining stickers. Be extra careful with the heat gun. If you hold it very close to the sticker, you may damage it permanently. It will take a full day for the glue to achieve full adhesion, so it's better not to ride the bike until the next day. Install the rear mounts on the skid plate. Leave them loose and put the skid plate on the bike to check their position. Mark the position on the front and rear mounts. Remove the skid plate and tighten the bolts of the mounts. Put the skid plate on the bike and secure the 2 M8 bolts. Check the alignment on each side and the clearance between the skid plate and the fuel tanks. Load the bike with fuel and check for leaks, making sure everything is sealed and no fuel is leaking from the connections. Start the bike using the front fuel pump and check for leaks. Switch to the rear pump and check again for leaks, making sure that the fuel piping is fully sealed. Your Aurora 701 Xplorer is now ready for its first ride. If you need more help, feel free to send us an email or call us. Thank you for choosing Aurora Rally Equipment.